V-Rising is a new action survival game with a rather complex gameplay and an unforgiving combat system, so here's 25 tips to improve your combat and assert your dominance. Hello everyone, welcome to my very first V-Rising guide. Now this game follows a vampire survival concept in an open world filled with action, danger and bloody battles. Literally. For beginners, V-Rising can be quite frustrating. It requires some get used to when it comes to the controls and combat in general, but that's part of the journey. Nobody said it would be easy. Now I think V-Rising is a challenging game since it requires a strategy and a battle plan, sort of speaking. It's not the type of game you just rush in and hope for the best. One mistake could cost you the entire battle, especially in boss fights. As such, I created an in-depth guide featuring 25 advanced combat tips, which will surely improve the way you fight and help you thrive. Alright then, let's get started! In V-Rising, enemies are lurking at every corner, and even though the difficulty is relatively low at the beginning, things can easily get out of hand if you adventure far off your gear limits. Since you are in an open world map, it's not difficult to end up in areas you're not really supposed to be at. So let me show you a few tips to help you understand if you are on the right path or not so much. Gray named enemies are below your gear score, yellow named enemies means they are about the same level as you, and red named enemies are way above your gear score. Their levels are even replaced with a skull to indicate danger, so watch out for those. I'm not saying you should avoid them at any cost, but expect a very tough and forgiving fight with a very good chance of you ending up dead. Just saying. Okay, so when you are exploring, I highly advise you guys to scout first when you approach a new area with unknown enemies, as in you don't know exactly how they hit, what skills they have, and so on. Again, hover over their names and check the colors and levels to understand what lays ahead, or if it's even worth engaging. If the area is filled with skull red enemies, then perhaps it's just better to move along or retreat. Normally, fighting those is asking for trouble. I don't think it's worth the effort. Plus, there are some nasty enemies like this Melita Brawler who can one-hit players with 300 HP. So there's that too, but it's totally up to you if you want to risk it or not. Alright, as a vampire, you will have to suck a lot of blood if you want to stay alive, but not all blood is the same. If your goal is merely survival, then sucking a deer is more than enough. However, if you wish to be combat ready and increase your odds to beat bosses, then you should probably know your food, your prey. That information is always displayed under the enemy's HP bar, as well as the percentage or quality of the blood. The number doesn't indicate your chances of feeding, it indicates how pure the blood is. The higher, the better. The more passive effects you can lock at once. Now, what blood types are there? Currently, there are 7, and they are very different from one another. I retrieved the stats for all blood types just so you guys can check them out and decide what's best for your build. Feel free to pause to read each blood type in depth. Now in this early phase we have the Frail blood, which gives no effects at all, it's like the pleb one. Then we have creature, focused on mobility and defense. Then we have combat bloods. Warrior is focused on physical damage. Brute is focused on regen and attack speed. Rogue is specialized in crit chance. Scholar is the ideal blood type for magical users. And finally, the Worker's blood is meant for the pacifist farmers who want to have nothing to do with fighting for the time being. That's it for now. You have plenty of choices, and perhaps there will be more in the future. Pure blood is rare to find, but when you do, there is an option to share with other fellow vampires through the exposure vein skill. Now this feature is very contextual since it's not beneficial for the host. By letting someone drain you, your blood quantity will drop 50%, which means it won't be long until you have to feed again and lose your special effects. Anyway, sharing blood is normally a great thing to do when A, you drank a really pure blood type, and B, you two are about to engage in a big fight, like a boss fight. In such scenario, both players can benefit from the massive buffs and sharing blood in order to perform much better in immediate combat. But other than that, it's pretty much a waste of resources. As I said, it's a very contextual skill, still it's a possible one. During combat, you will inevitably lose health, and the easiest way to heal is to use the Blood Mend skill, which regenerates your wounds by sacrificing some of your blood. Now, this skill is wonderful for normal combat. You can just drain random enemies, fight, heal, and repeat. It's basically like a healing spell with free costs. You should use and abuse of this skill for everyday fighting, but make sure to keep an eye on your blood levels or meter. When you are starving, your screen will get a bloody frame around the edges, so that's a great indicator without staring or stalking your HP bar. That can be a bit annoying to do. The most important thing though is to do not go out of blood, because when you do, you will lose health and become a 1 HP pathetic vampire, and then anything can one hit you. A wolf comes and you're dead, and it's very, very sad. So we don't want that to happen. Now, if you wish to keep pure blood for as long as possible, then please do not use Blood Mend to heal. Don't touch it at all, since, well, it will drain your precious blood and put it to waste. If you are wondering how can you remain forever strong with a given pure blood, well, it's not so easy. Maybe in late game there is some item to keep your blood type in check, but in early and mid game there's nothing at all. So the best way to safeguard your blood as much as possible is through not wasting it. Following that logic, you should ban Blood Mend for the time being and use HP salves or potions to heal yourself instead. I know your rare blood won't last forever, but it will surely take longer to deplete, so that's something. Hearts, or most specifically tainted hearts, are a common drop in Re-Rising, and they can be consumed for some blood. Very few, but it can be enough. Even though vampires should seek a source with better blood quality, these hearts are still useful on its own way. When you are running out of blood and you are unable to feed for whatever reason, especially during combat, these hearts might be your salvation from facing certain death. Sure, you will tune to Frail blood, which holds no benefits at all, but who cares? It's better to stay alive and weak than to perish and drop all your farm at some remote area of the map. Okay, time to move into real action now. In V-Rising, there are some essential combat mechanics you should excel at if you want to become a true immortal, especially when soloing. First of all, you should be aware that enemies usually have a group behavior and proximity aggro, so if you lure one, the others will follow. For example, here we ended up luring several groups from the left and right sides, resulting in a very messy and almost deadly challenge. So understanding how much you can take at once is crucial for survival. Next, you should learn how to kite around, in other words, move in circles or back and forward in a small space to dodge enemy hits and to ensure targets do not reset. This is also very important. This way you can take them down safely at your own pace. Take your time, chill out, and get the job done. But don't go too far or enemies will return to their spawn position and regenerate any missing HP. Kiting is definitely one of your best friends during boss fights because enemies are very resilient and possess special powerful skills. So any tools to help you survive longer is a bonus really. Lastly, be assured that kiting in this game can be aided by many skills. Let's keep moving. Your space dash or travel ability is one of the most powerful skills in the entire game, no matter which one you end up choosing, because it allows you to blink and dodge any incoming damage in the process. When timed correctly, you can move away while dodging any incoming damage at the same time. The problem here is to master the art of timing your dash, since different enemies have different abilities. It's all about quick reflexes and adaptation. But overall, any incoming attacks or charges coming your way can be dodged using this skill. So please integrate it into your gameplay at all times. It's not only an essential combat tool, it's also your survival insurance and a game changer in many battles. Now, for the most part, relying on the travel ability alone is not enough. However, you can increase your chances of survival by simply moving around non-stop. This way you can easily avoid ranged attacks coming in your direction. Even though this strategy can work versus all enemies, it's more efficient versus ranged attacks. Moving away the old-fashioned way from enemy attacks is a smart idea, since the space dash has a cooldown and moving around does not. There are a few scenarios where moving during combat is a bad idea. For example, here versus this boss who spawned dozens of mines around us. Yeah, in that case, hold your ground, of course, but in general, moving is essential to deny enemy damage. So write it down in your book of action. Another tip to increase your combat proneness is watching over your position. Now, in low-level areas, it's not very important to position well, but later on, it is crucial to get the upper hand because enemies often possess deadly skills. So if you don't dodge their skills, you are one step closer to death. My best advice is to ensure you have a wide, large place to move around when you fight huge groups, elites, or bosses. Don't corner yourself or increase your chances to get stuck somewhere in some world asset. When you are in tight spaces, chances are you won't be able to do any of the previous tips. Remember, the right position enables maneuver freedom, and that could very well be your key to success in every major battle. The next tip can be very useful. It's actually genius. While cutting or positioning yourself, you can always use the environment around you as cover or as damage blockers. For example, going behind a rock or trees often blocks ranged hits. For melee targets, they have to move in an angle and might even get stuck while trying to reach you. So when you are in critical situations like this one, remember to use what's at your disposal to survive. Now, the two clips I selected for this point are excellent examples. In the first one, I divided and conquered the Alpha Wolf's pack. The boss was even stuck between a rock and a tree while I was busy with the minor wolves. In the second clip though, my teammates were down and I used this center rock as cover while I assessed the situation. In the end, I was still forced to retreat, but at least I escaped with my life, thanks to the rock. Luring more enemies than you can handle can become a huge problem and deadly issue. As such, I recommend you to lure one enemy group at a time unless your gear score is way above the enemy level you are engaging. Even then, don't underestimate your opponent. In here, I ended up taking the wrong turn and went deep into a bandit's camp. In the process, I aggroed dozens of enemies and things didn't go so well as you can see. It was not possible for me to kite all of that, so for safety reasons I just went the other way, and yeah, that's it. That's surely one way to solve the problem when you cannot handle that many enemies at once. Now let's talk about bosses or V-Blood enemies. They possess a one-of-a-kind blood, and if you feed on V-Blood, you will unlock all sorts of new things, such as skills, structures, and gear. Each boss has their unique rewards, as well as skills, which might require a different strategy. Now, to track a boss, you need to build and access a blood altar. Then be aware that you can only track bosses with a level similar to your gear score. For those much higher than you, well, the altar will not even display info on those, thus making it unable to track. However, if you come across them in the world and end up taking them down, let's say with your friends, you will unlock the rewards either way. It's not uncommon to come across bosses since some of them roam the world, like vampire hunters. Also, if you are unsure if an enemy carries V-Blood or not, make sure to hover over their HP bar, and it's right below there. Normally named enemies are V-Blood carriers, so that's another indicator. As for the boss tracking feature itself, it can be a bit confusing at first, but it's very easy to understand. Once you track a boss, you will see a directional bloodline like this one, which indicates the direction where your prey is located. So you must head that way until you find it. It could take a while though if the respective boss is in the other side of the map in that same direction, but hey, at least you know where to go instead of searching blindly. Now when it comes to player skills, there are 5 main types of attack skills: Blood, Unholy, Illusion, Chaos, and Frost. There's also vampire skills, which focus on utility and special vampiric abilities, like charming humans. Now keep in mind that you can freely respec skills at any time, so feel free to change and adapt your build depending on the foes you face. It's actually a smart thing to do, especially in battles gone wrong, instead of running the same exact combination every single time, which is less effective against certain bosses. You might want to explore and try out different stuff. Maybe even find out that some skills can counter the boss you are fighting, and that will surely help you dominate the target. Besides skills and vampiric abilities, players can also unlock different weapon skills depending on the weapon type they equip. However, different weapon levels unlock different skills. Basically, the higher the level, the more skills it unlocks. In this clip, I tested 3 different types of weapons, one made out of bone, one copper, and one iron. As shown, the bone weapon only has 1 skill, Then the copper offers me 2 skills, and finally the iron crossbow features 3 skills. So if you are wondering about how to unlock more weapon skills, just put your hands on better gear, and that's pretty much it. Still on the topic of weapons, keep in mind that only the equipped weapon counts towards your gear score, so if suddenly your gear score drops or if your friend has the same exact gear and your levels differ, it might be because you are holding another weapon or none at all. As shown in this test, your gear score is 0 by default, and the quick bar equipped weapons only count towards your gear score when you are holding them for real. Small detail, I know, which might be handy at the Blood Altar to unlock new boss entries since it's based on your gear score, so remember that. If you often play V-Rising with friends, then let me share a few essential combat tips to make things more fluid and less harsh on the group. Watch out for other fellow vampires. You can keep track of their HP on the left side once they join your clan/group. Also, it's a good idea to provide cover when someone is in danger, let's say down or about to go down. If you have shields or barriers, now is the time to use them effectively. Also, body blocking or exchanging tanking roles might do the trick if you have plenty of health to spare. Another combat-changing strategy is to take turns and heal when low, instead of fighting to death. For example, in this boss fight, I took the lead while my friend healed in the back since he was very low HP. Enemies usually attack players in front of them, so doing simple attacks should allow you to switch the focus without much of an issue. In this other clip, I was about to die, so I moved a bit back and healed myself while my friend fought off the enemies and covered me from hugging the floor. Lastly, when you decide to heal during combat, make sure to keep some distance from the enemies, since area damage might interrupt or even kill you. In V-Rising, you can revive other vampires, so don't forget about the glowing red bodies around you. Just saying. In fact, down players have a huge time window, which means you normally have enough time to finish the battle and safely revive your down allies. So if you are playing in a group, don't despair and instantly revive, because your timer is rather huge. It's always better to be patient and to face the consequences of dying, walking back, dropping your loot, and so on. It's pretty boring when that happens. Combat can get really intense in V-Rising, and there's plenty of advanced tricks you can use to take advantage of the system. For example, when using weapons, you can simply press your left mouse button to continuously attack instead of spam clicking it all the time. This trick has 2 main benefits. First of all, you won't risk spraining your finger from so much clicking, of course. And secondly, you ensure that you do not waste any time between attacks. There is some sort of cooldown, especially for crossbows, it's quite huge there. But if you keep pressing the attack button, the system will keep attacking as soon as possible without any human delays. Just make sure to accurately hover over where you wish to hit, and voila! Another advanced trick I find useful is to switch between melee and ranged weapons depending on the enemies you face. Sure, some builds are focused on melee or ranged, but guys, battle can change in a blink of an eye. Sometimes it's essential to use one or the other, so why not carry both at all times? In fact, some bosses cast area of effect skills all around them, which makes it really risky and ruthless at close range. The same happens with melee. If you have an enemy face hitting you, it's probably easier and quicker to take them down using a melee weapon instead of the crossbow, which has a huge delay between shots. So whenever possible, carry both weapon types during your journeys, definitely. Alright, this next strategy is not always possible to do, but it's highly effective when the proper conditions are met. In V-Rising, there are multiple enemy factions and they are not exactly friendly towards each other, which means you can turn this political fact to your favor. That's right. When you spot 2 different groups of enemies nearby, it's very easy to aggro them both and force a faction fight, like I did here. Just hit both factions and then run in circles until one faction hits the other, and that's it. Watch the magic unfoil. You can also use the travel dash to lose aggro, that also helps. From this point, all you have to do is watch and collect the loot when the fight is over. You will have to finish off the survivors too, but that's fine compared to the initial numbers you had. I find this strategy extremely helpful when exploring high-level areas where enemies are all red to me. It's basically like using environmental to your advantage. Let the system fight itself, and it's definitely something not many players know about yet. Another useful combat tip is to finish off foes while feeding on them. Now, this strat might sound strange and useless at first, but it's actually a handy thing to know. Usually you should only feed to switch blood types or to replenish your blood levels. However, if you are running a low blood quality or if you are on the verge of death, it's not a bad idea to finish off enemies by draining them, especially if it's an elite or high-level enemy, which can easily take you down. During feeding, your target is unresponsive and the drain is lethal, so if you are dying and there's no other enemies aggroing you, this is a fantastic and safe way to conclude the fight. You take them down, you drink some blood, and he's down. Win-win situation, really. Lastly, you should know that about every 20 days in game, the Blood Moon event will take place. I couldn't find much info about this yet, but the buff is very clear and it shows in game. So the world will become covered in a red bloody mist, and you can enjoy a special buff, a 20% boost to all the effects unlocked by your blood type, plus 10% movement speed. It's the ideal time to go boss hunting, by the way. Moreover, I spotted a few combat environmental items at some enemy camps, like this set of armor, which makes you immortal just for a few seconds. The con is that you cannot attack or use any skills while the effect is up. There might be other items like this in the world, so keep an eye for any potential environmental items which might aid you in battle. Combat mechanics in V-Rising can be a bit complex, especially if you are not used to this sort of survival action game. However, with the right knowledge and some getting used to, you will find yourself in a much better position. And hopefully, you will get to live longer too. Anyway, these are my 25 advanced combat tips to better succeed in any fight you might come across. But keep in mind that dying is part of the process. It happens to the best of us. Sometimes one wrong move can end up in disaster, but right moves can also be very rewarding. Well, I hope these tips were useful to you. If you enjoyed this guide and you would like more in-depth content on V-Rising, please feel free to leave a like, comment below, and subscribe, of course. That's it from my end. I am Marta Branco, and I will catch you all in the next one. Until then, take care, adeus, bye bye!